Hello, my name is Adrian Arvin, and my wife Heidi and I have written two books entitled Life Conscious and The Linear Heritage of Women, both of which are available at these online bookstores: Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Books A Million, and iUniverse. The subject of this talk is on death and how we deal with our dead. Also, is there an afterlife? When it comes to death, all we need to do is observe the slow decaying of an animal. For instance, while driving to work one day, you may notice a freshly killed deer on the side of the road. Obviously, some hapless driver and the deer decided to share the same space and time, and the deer lost. The deer lays there in its last pose, but still seems as if it could jump up at any moment and run away. But it can't. Its life consciousness has been forced out of its body by the impact of the vehicle. As you go home that evening, you spot the deer and you know that it really is dead because its body is unusually bloated from the decomposing gases in its body cavity. The next morning, as you pass by, you notice that it is much flatter after the gases have escaped, and that the animals and birds have been feeding on it as flies start to surround its sinking and stinking corpse, laying their larvae. In a few days, there will be nothing but a grease spot, some hide and bones, and in a month there will be no evidence that that deer had died there at all. But is this deer really dead? What just happened to this dead deer's body? Well, nature has reclaimed its body as it was consumed by animals, birds, insects, and its fluids drained into the ground, becoming nutrients for the surrounding plants. So the deer still exists as part of all of these still living creatures, just as the animals, fishes, vegetables, and fruits that we consume still live in our bodies to replenish our own cells. The deer's DNA fragments are now being used by those that consumed it, not only as energy, but in aiding in the rebuilding of their cells. If you really think about it, nothing really dies. There will always be a part of you living somewhere in a plant, animal, bird, or fish. Everything on our earth that is living will be recycled back into the living. It's kind of like water. The very same drops of water that you just drank could have been used in the past by a dinosaur 100 million years ago, or a shark 100,000 years ago, a butterfly 100 years ago, or by a human baby last month. Another analogy is an old dead tree trunk that is still upright with its withering roots still in the ground. One of my paintings, called Playing an Ancient Game, helps to explain this concept of life consciousness in a nutshell. The painting is of an old aspen tree trunk that died 10 years earlier, that is still involved in the day-to-day activities of life. In this case, as a hiding place for a rabbit from a wolf. Surrounding the stump are the products of its own seeds, young trees that have spawned, that have taken up the life-conscious baton of life, while the stump slowly degenerates into parts and pieces to be reused by other forms of life. This way of degeneration after death is true for all life forms, for this is nature's way. It will slowly decay into nothing more than DNA fragments to be used by its progeny, insects, and animals to build new cells. This reactivation back to living organisms shows that death is not the end, but the beginning of being a part of many living organisms. This beginning is not shared by modern humans at all, who embalm or encase our dead in airtight caskets and critter-proof vaults, denying nature itself of the nutrients that continuing living organisms need. This human mummification is a conundrum as we strive for immortality by keeping our bodies in a hopeless facade of living, but deny nature the natural distribution of our DNA fragments. On the one hand, we are hoping to live forever by preserving our bodies, only to deny ourselves the realistic shot of living continually through other organisms as is meant to be. The modern definition of the word embalming is defined as temporarily preserving human remains to delay decomposition and maintain the appearance of the body so it can be publicly displayed at funerals. But where did this practice originate? Long before modern embalming techniques were used, the practice of preserving human remains had a very long, complex history containing a mixture of culture, art, and science. The first evidence of the preservation of the human remains that exists in archaeological record is in ancient Egypt, where during the period of 6000 BC to approximately 600 AD, an elaborate process of mummification was practiced because of religious beliefs that the soul would eventually return to the preserved mummy. Several ancient Andean cultures in Chile and Peru also practiced mummification, and several mummies have also been discovered preserved in glacial ice in Russia and Greenland as well. In China, many well-preserved bodies from the Han Dynasty have been discovered, preserved in ideal temperatures and humidity levels. In Babylon, Persia, and Syria, many preserved their dead by placing them in jars of honey. During the Renaissance period in Europe, anatomists, including Leonardo da Vinci, who wished to preserve their specimens, began to develop and use chemical compounds to delay decomposition. During the American Civil War, Northern soldiers were dying in Southern battlefields, and their families wanted their fathers, husbands, and sons prepared for burial at home. In 1867, formaldehyde was discovered by a couple of European chemists who replaced the previous arsenic and alcohol-based concoction. Modern embalming techniques provide an opportunity for mourners to publicly view the body of the deceased, which is a generally accepted as an important part of the grieving process. Embalming, however, poisons the body, making it almost useless to nature. Our modern method of encasing bodies in airtight coffins with waterproof crypts also deny what is rightfully nature's to use. This technique was started in the belief that we would join our earthly king or pharaoh when we pass away to the heavens. Modern embalming techniques provide an opportunity for mourners to publicly view the body of the deceased, which is a generally accepted as an important part of the grieving process. Embalming, however, poisons the body, making it almost useless to nature. Our modern method of encasing bodies in airtight coffins and waterproof crypts also deny what is rightfully nature's to reuse. This technique was started in the belief that we would join our earthly king or pharaoh when they passed away to the heavens. Mummification has backfired as corpses several thousand years old have been dug up to be placed in museums, used as entertainment in unwrapping parties, ground up to be used as aphrodisiacs, and even burned as fuel. Who is to say that the same thing won't happen again to our own embalmed bodies thousands of years from now? The urge to keep living is so strong that we will create religions and techniques to preserve our bodies. Religions show us ways to a heavenly afterlife if we live our lives in a proper and respectful manner under these laws and edicts. But this is not what the afterlife is all about. The afterlife has to do with the continuation of the linearity of life on our earth. Creatures die so that others can live by consuming them as food. There would be corpses everywhere if animals, insects, and plants didn't consume them. Our earth is alive because the very grounds that we stand on are teeming with the DNA fragments from those animals, insects, and plants that have lived before us. Is it any wonder that if there were a heaven, that is the earth itself? What we are really concerned about in the afterlife is whether or not our own personal consciousness will continue after death. Not only do our bodies, through embalming, need to continue the semblance of being alive, but we need assurance that our own souls, personas, or personal consciousness will be retained. The answer is that some of our personal consciousness will continue. As our life consciousness leaves our bodies during death to rejoin the Earth's very own life consciousness, parts of our personal life consciousness are retained also. Remember that water is a retainer of memory and that our Earth is surrounded by water in the air, lakes, rivers, and oceans. The retaining of this memory needs a lot of energy, and the Earth provides it by being a gigantic electromagnetic generator spinning through space. This is the real afterlife that has been growing and changing throughout our Earth's history. When the dinosaurs were the dominant species, it was their collective life consciousness that dominated the Earth's life conscious. And today it is dominated by the collective human life consciousness. It is this collective consciousness that makes up most of Earth's current life conscious. The rest is made up by the plants, animals, birds, and fishes' life consciousnesses. Many today experience communicating with an angel, spirit guide, ancestor, teachers, masters, or religious prophets. This communication can be in the form of prayer, touch, smell, telepathy, or even visually. This communication must be done at the Earth's Schumann resonant frequency of around 8 Hertz or a multiple thereof. This to me is proof of the existence of the Earth's collective human life consciousnesses, as these former personal consciousnesses continue to communicate with the living. This also supports the belief of the existence of an afterlife.